Alright, so we are
Farmers?
live. Bum. Cool. Well, welcome back to the channel, and this is a tech talk. Got Rainbowsmaug back, and you can see Rainbowsmaug face now. Something we could have done a long time ago, but here we are. Essentially, we had a couple ideas for today's kind of episode and everything. I think one thing that we kind of considered was discussing the new kind of Lost Box, Lost Soup, Lost Box kitchen sink because it
Lost Box kitchen sink.
throws everything and the kitchen sink at your opponent. And this is the Tord Reklev variant that took top 8 at the Gdansk Regional.
It's a
Which
mouthful.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, we'll pull that list up in a second. Could you send me that list? I'll upload it into PTCL second.
Yeah.
And then on top of that regional was won by Snorlax Stall, a deck that Smog also likes to play. And we could just start there as you send me over that list as a player, how do you feel in regards, and I will give my opinion, in regards to the what's it called? How Snorlax plays and healthy? Do you think it's not healthy? There's common talks already about it being banned. So, let me hear your thoughts. I know you've played the deck, you like the deck.
I mean, like we talked about this the other day. I feel like I'm super biased because I love decks like Snorlax. So I just always wanted to stay. But as you were pointing out when we were discussing yesterday, that like it's really not good for not like I want to say not for the meta, because I think from like a competitive standpoint, it's a good thing to have decks like Snorlax around.
Yeah.
But from a overall viewership and growth of the game standpoint, it's horrible.
Yeah.
And that's how do you balance that?
Yeah.
That's the struggle.
It is. It is a tough one because essentially, like, you don't want gameplay in a game like this to feel one-sided, and that's essentially what Snorlax does. Now, games in Pokemon can feel very one-sided, where you just don't draw anything. Oh, cool! I'm just showing off the list in our conversation. Whoops. I'm
Quality.
killing it. We're back. Should be back. We are back. Awesome. We're good.
Nice.
My
Killing
bad.
it.
So yeah, essentially, like, when things become one person is doing something and the other person isn't able to do anything and play the game, that creates it's not fun for both players, which again, sometimes losing isn't fun, so it can also feel that way. But when you when you're playing this, there should be back and forth. Snorlax doesn't really create much back and forth. It becomes one person playing a two-player game. Is a frame of reference that I heard, and I think that there's some value to that. That some other stall decks and control decks in the past have you when you play your turn, you feel like there's something that you might be able to do. Now, I'm gonna let you talk because I think that that's like the end of my point, and I was gonna play the other side of the coin, but I kind of want to hear it more from you in that regard of like, so with that being said, it being a two-player game or a one person playing a two-player game, all those things. Oh, bye.
Wrong button. Sorry.
Yeah, but yeah, go ahead.
All right. Sorry. Remind me what you just said, because me leaving just totally
Totally.
messed
No,
up
I get it. I
ever
get it.
doing.
So essentially, what I was getting after was Snorlax not creating much of um,
Counterplay.
counterplay, and that it feels like I'm able to do much. It's like if you're set up, I don't have there's literally nothing I can do other than just force you to not be able to deck out, force you to make sure you grab the Pidgeot B and or you keep cycling the supporters and stuff like that. So that's one concept that's been talked about.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Snorlax, once you're set up, so it's not that you effectively are completely locking the opponent out, but you are trying to limit the potential possibility that they're going to be able to find an answer.
Yeah.
Um, I know, as we've discussed before, I've equated it often to Magic the Gathering's modern format Lost Zone. Oh my God, Magic the Gathering's modern format deck known as
Lantern control.
Lantern Control. Starts with an L.
Yeah.
It's close.
Yeah, close enough.
Lantern Control, which is effectively very similar in the concept that you are locking you're limiting your opponent's ability to, like, what their choices are. You're
Yeah.
limiting all of their options so that they basically have to draw the exact answer multiple times. Only through grabbing that exact answer will they be able to win. Or get out of the lock, what have you. And it's not impossible, but it definitely see it's such a struggle for me because, like, it's a conflicting point where I love that. I think if you're able to put those pieces together, get the lock set up, and then you up until a very specific point, which is typically fairly far along in the game, you still have to actively make sure you are keeping the lock in place. Like, you're still counter catching, switch carding, boss's orders, bless you, um, drawing to find those answers. You still have to actively participate as the Snorlax player to
Yeah.
maintain that lock, uh, which is
You have to
exceptionally
make
frustrating.
proper decisions, and
Correct.
if you aren't smart, you can, you can let go of said lock and then allow the opponent to claw back into the game in certain ways. And there are
Hmm.
cards in the format currently, switch cards, whether that's escape rope, cross switchers, switch cart, um, that can help you get out of those locks. And a lot of decks already play those, but most decks are playing those in lower counts. So the what I was gonna get at of like my counter argument to myself is that there are techs currently in the format, in switch cards, in sometimes in bosses orders and things like that, or your own gust effects that can pull up a Rotom V or a Mimikyu or something like that that allows you to actually switch out of the active. And the main card being Minior, which is a perfect counter to this card because all you have to do is get it onto the bench, attach energy, and then it's Okoing Snorlax. Yeah, if they put a Bravery Charm or Luxurious Cape or something on it, doesn't matter because it's just like, well, they have to find a way to get the Minior back out, but then all you have to do is find another energy and attach it and go. Like that is a pretty easy thing, and it's one card to play. So
100%.
so that's
I
where it doesn't necessarily, it's not like, oh, there's just no answer to it. Also, Professor Turo's scenario is also a pretty solid answer. If they lock something into active and that's a supporter you play, just pick it up.
my hot take on the whole situation, the whole conversation, to be honest, is if any other rogue, air quotes here, deck won this past weekend event,
Mm-hmm.
nobody would be having a topic of discussion of if it's too strong and needs to get banned.
100%.
It's because people don't like playing against it that it needs to be removed.
And it also
If
doesn't create, it's not fun to watch.
Yep,
To
spectator.
the core, like the masses, it is not that much fun to watch. But there is a community in Pokemon and in card games that love these styles of decks. So,
Hi, I resemble that statement.
so yeah, so that it's not that it's like, oh, it's just completely despised. It isn't. It is. It
No,
is
it's just that
sometimes well liked as well.
there's enough of an audience that dislikes it that we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
And it's just because it's not fun to play against.
Yeah.
If I think the only other deck in the format that if it had won this weekend, we would have had the same conversation about would be Iron Valiant, because if it won a bunch by winning on turn 1,
Yeah.
people would be salty.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, people don't care how strong a deck is if they feel like they had fun playing against it. If they
Hmm.
don't feel like they were able to enjoy themselves or partake in the battle, if you will, that's when they get salty. That's when decks start getting banned. It's not because they're so strong. Snorlax isn't above and beyond stronger than any other deck in the format that's in that
You just
same
need to
tier right
know how to
now.
play the matchup, and you need to, and you
You
have to make that decision with your deck building if you're
you have to
going to be
be
teched into it or not teched into it.
you have to be aware that it's part of the meta.
Yep.
You have to actually play around the fact that it's in the meta, and put deck tech cards, like you have to build your 60 list around the fact that this deck exists.
Yeah.
So you should play around that as well. And like also you got to chalk up that like you're going to lose eventually. Like sometimes you're going to lose games. Like I don't
Yeah.
know, I'm trying to think of like another deck. Like if I'm playing Serena
Hmm.
uh into other decks, whatever, like I'm not gonna be upset because, oh well, they have the because oh well, Roaring Moon has the ability to just kill this Pokemon every turn. Like Roaring Moon's broken, it's too strong. I don't want to play against this. This isn't fun. Like I feel like that's the again, like I said, hot take. Like I think that's the epitome of a deck like this
Yeah.
where people. The reason the conversation comes up is because people are salty. People don't enjoy playing against it. People didn't enjoy playing against Lantern Control for the most part. The deck forces you to draw and play precisely to play
Hmm.
around it.
Yeah.
There are lots of ways to play around it. I've played against really good pilots of other deck lists that
But
have beaten me on Snorlax.
yeah.
It's part of the game.
Totally.
It's just I personally don't think we should be banning cards or trying to deter decks from being played just because it's
I mean,
not
here's the
fun to
thing. You
watch
run
or
a
play
59
against.
card deck, and every deck outside of Snorlax plays a Minior, and, oh, okay, it's 58 cards where they play Hisuian Heavy Ball, so they increase their odds, and that doesn't necessarily guarantee you a win, but it increases your chances of winning dramatically against Snorlax. So it's like, that's how you phase Snorlax out of the meta, but then the moment people start dropping Miniors, you then lead for Snorlax to come back. So it's going to be the same ebbs and flows with Spirit Tomb and Mew and Genesect, where we had the same thing where you did well when people didn't respect it and dropped Spirit Tomb, and then they just got wrecked by the fact that Genesect will draw them so many cards. So it's the same thing, and I think that is great. So my last point as to why it's not great, and I just want you to kind of give another rebuttal because I think this has been great,
Yeah,
is when you compare the Pokemon, the game, whether that's through the anime or what has been showcased through the video games itself, it is always about a back and forth between the two Pokemon. There's something happening, right? That's how the interaction of Pokemon like has where it started and where its roots are. Where in this situation, it's two Pokemon standing around doing nothing. And that kind of defeats the spirit of the Pokemon battling in general. Now, that aside, it's a win condition in a game and is fair, and I agree with that. But
hmm
that's my other point the as to hey, this doesn't really feel like Pokemon
not the
anymore.
spirit of the game.
Yeah,
I would My rebuttal to that would be that you're building a trading card game. You can try to keep things in the spirit of it to an extent, but you're going to hit a point where
you
in
can't.
any TCG, if you have people playing it competitively, they
Yeah,
don't care. It's trying to keep that PG. They don't care what the spirit of the game is.
yeah,
They want to win. That's what a competitive TCG is about, right?
very.
Like I don't become a top
Yep,
20 player in the world by playing to the spirit of Pokemon TCG. I
yep,
play by building
The
the
best
deck
deck.
that is the most effective to win. That's every TCG. That's Yu-Gi-Oh. That's Pokemon. That's what's the new Disney one? Lorcana.
Hmm?
That's Magic the Gathering. That's Hearthstone. That's what is it? Legends of Runeterra, I think is the one from Riot. Like that's every TCG, whether it's
Yeah.
online only or physical cards. If you were going to build a game, a trading card game, where the goal is to have it be played at a super competitive level where people can be professional, high level players and make a living doing
Yeah.
so, their only goal is to win. And when
Yeah.
that is the case, they're going to build whatever is the most effective.
100%,
And
man.
I think trying to pigeonhole those players and the meta of your game by just saying, hey, we're going to ban this, it doesn't fit into the flavor of our TCG, feels bad as a competitive player.
Sure. And again, being that there are options for you to play that you can easily run in your deck, and I mean, Ionos can hurt the deck. You know, Judge can be a great card to play against Snorlax.
Mm-hmm.
Playing Path to the Peak can shut down Rotom. You just up your switch cards if you don't want to play the minier. Like you just have to understand that you're going to have cards in your deck, and that's something that was talked about from a bunch of videos that I've seen recently. It is either you tech in the minior and call it a day, or you tech in other cards like switches and escape ropes and things like that that will also help you in other matchups and don't really slow down your deck, but you just have to cut a couple extra cards to make room for those slots so you don't just get blown out by Snorlax. And you another couple things to keep in mind. Understand your local meta. What are you playing? Are you playing just a league? You played a league cup, you played a regional, you go to play an international championship. What are you playing in? And do you think you're going to run into Snorlax? If that's the case, and you think you want your deck to be more consistent against everything else, then put the Minior in. But if you are
Mm-hmm.
like, I want it to be, much more across the board ready to go, then maybe you run some more switch cards. There's a big reason in the list that I've been playing, I've been trying to add more bosses orders, simply like to help in this matchup, for one, and knowing that I can gust into a Rotom before they can pick it up off of a Turo or a Penny or something like that.
Yep.
Can it pick up Penny? Penny can pick it up.
Penny can pick it up, yeah.
Yeah. So that being just a my some amount of my teching that I have essentially 5 ways to get it out. So I need to kill a Rotom and try and kill 4 Snorlax, and then I
Yep.
win.
That's it.
That's I'm there essentially, and can the Snorlax player eliminate those chances? Sure. Can the Snorlax players make a mistake and also not have it? Sure. So, it's definitely something I'm considering getting, watching the meta and watching the meta forecast of how things are going
Yeah.
if I need to, and I'll see. I'll
I
be
think
be ready to do it, and I'll be ready to play for it. So, yeah.
with a very small amount of deck list manipulation, the potential to be able to outplay Snorlax through smart play, like any match against any deck, becomes significantly more viable.
Yep.
And since almost every deck list is running a one-off on something like Manaphy and Jirachi and what's the other one? Some of them running Spiritomb.
The barrel, Bidoof,
It's a
everything.
barrel, but you're intentionally running these cards to stop the threat from like one or two other cards in the meta, right? Like Manaphy's stopping. What did we say it was? Greninja and Kyogre, and like one other one.
Kyogre, Garchomp. There's a handful of cards.
Yeah,
There's a Zapdos that can do damage, and it's like there are cards out
Jirachi,
there. Jirachi stops. Screamtail.
Sableye.
Screamtail's another one that Manaphy stops.
Yep.
Jirachi stops. Sableye, Cresselia, and Medicham V are like the main three culprits that it stops
So
currently.
there's two cards a bunch of people are running to effectively stop what, two or three decks?
Hmm?
So in that same vein, running one switch or two switches, and that works against that is a more diverse usable card than running something like a Manaphy, and that already is shutting down Snorlax.
Yeah.
Like I think the solution is a much more not globally, like diversely usable card set
Yeah.
than what we're already teching in for other deck lists that we're playing against. So why are we upset if like putting in 2 switches is the difference between winning and losing against Snorlax, and the switches work against every deck list versus
They have
Manaphy, which
value.
works at 40% of the deck lists or whatever.
Yeah. And that's again, that's just the whole part of it is I think if we run into an issue where a entire top 8 is Snorlax stall and we get into the realm
That'd be
of the
wild.
Snorlax stall mirror for every top 8 match is like what happens. Now I think we raise the alarms and we do something about it. Like immediately ban it because that is going to be the most boring top 8 ever. But the
Well, not
likelihood
only
of that
that.
happening is it's not going to happen.
Well, not only that, but like if you have any deck that is all top 8,
Yeah.
or is
There's a
the
problem.
top 4 every time, there's a problem.
If Charizard was the top 8 positions, like the Pokemon world would be stoked about it because everybody loves Charizard. But at the same time, there would be an issue because the simple fact that that there was one top 8 list at LAIC, Snorlax lost in the top 8 game. It's the quarterfinals, I guess, or is it the quarterfinals? Yeah, quarterfinals.
Yeah.
And then at Gdansk, one of them was in there and it won it. And then at Brisbane Regionals in Australia, there were 2 Snorlax lists, but they I think finished like 6th and 7th. So these
Not that
lists,
good.
no, it is good. It is good that
good. It's
it's
not
consistently
that
making
good.
top 8, but it is not being so oppressive that it is allowing other decks to not play the game. If it was that way, then we're talking. Like, and that's where
I think that's the same with any deck list, though. Any deck
I'm
list that is
pretty sure
that
there were
oppressive
more
across the meta.
Guardies and well, actually I'm gonna go look that up right now. Let me look that up.
Any deck list that has more than 3 slots in top 8 should be banned.
So Gdansk had 1, Brisbane had 2, to LAIC. So there was 4 Snorlax and across. So there was 1, 2, counting up the Gardevoir. 4, 5. There was 5 Gardevoirs across them, even though there was no Gardevoir in top 8 of Gdansk. There was 5 total Gardevoirs in top 8 of LAIC and Brisbane Regional.
Ban Gardevoir. That's it. Hot take.
There
It's too
was,
strong.
I mean, looking at it, like Charizard had 5, maybe more. If I go, Charizard did not make top 8 at LAIC, and so there's 5 in a similar fashion. There was Mew and
Wait.
yeah, 3
I
Mews.
have
Like yeah, so it's like it was not like outwardly like the only deck that did well. So yeah.
I have a legitimate question because I don't know how this ruling works.
Mhm.
If there's 2 Snorlax decks
Yep.
and they're playing a timed match, best
Mhm.
of 3.
If you're saying who wins, I have no idea.
Yeah, like how do you determine a winner?
That's and okay, well
Like they're
there's
gonna
your
go to turns.
they're gonna go to turns, and if they're both in the finals, like they just tie, they both win. Like that's what happens because you can't determine a winner because nobody's taking prizes.
Yeah, 0
So
prizes are being taken. I'm very intrigued as to how that works.
so the Snorlax tech then becomes you play a way to take prizes. You tech a certain couple cards that allow you to eventually attack and whittle down whatever they have using some Pokemon that I don't know about. That's how you
You just
eventually
run
play the
one
game.
Roaring Moon, honestly. That's probably what it is. You run like one Roaring Moon and just 3 energy, or like 4 energy, and that's it.
Maybe, but then But then
I think it hurts the deck too much,
if they
honestly.
trap it, then like you're. But yeah,
Well,
they don't want.
you never play it. That's the
Yeah.
thing. You only play it on turn to win. You play it, you energy it in one turn somehow. I don't know how,
Yeah.
and you that's I think that's the only way. You need something that can because what? Let's see. Every Pokemon in the Snorlax deck outside of Spirit Tomb and Mimikyu uh have more than 100 HP. So
Well,
what?
Mimikyu's a great attacker. It puts 7 damage counters on something and can be a wall like that. That's like I feel
Yeah,
like
so
that's
maybe you just run just enough energy
so
to attack with Mimikyu.
yeah, and maybe you run a couple. Maybe you have to run probably closer to 4, and then that digs into the consistency. Yeah, I don't know.
Mm,
Either way, Snorlax
I
is
digress. Yeah.
fine. Yeah, let's get to the next portion. But Snorlax is fine. It is weird and does cause, I think, some issues, and some people are up in arms about it. But I can understand it. I think we all want to play the game and we all want it to be fun. And I thoroughly enjoy playing Pokemon when I have a back and forth and feel like my opponent outplays me by sequencing properly, not just outplays me by putting a Pokemon in the active and trapping a Pokemon in my active. That doesn't feel as strong to me, but that's just a personal opinion. And guess what? If the deck is winning, that's great. And that is a to me stays in the confines of the rules, and that's why it's fair. And I think it'll be
And
around, and I have to build my deck better for it.
and I have the most fun playing Pokemon by stopping you from having fun and not allowing you to play the game.
Exactly. So there's
We have
nothing wrong
equal
with that.
rights to have fun. So
Exactly. Exactly. We are not Pokey Oakley does not kink shame here. So
yeah.
all right.
No deck shame. No
No
deck
deck
shame.
shaming. Perfect. I love that. All right. So
The
we
kitchen
will
sink.
we're gonna save the kitchen sink for the end. But
Okay. Okay.
I'm gonna touch on if you're catching this at a different time or if you haven't followed along. We run a Saturday night Pokemon on our Discord that is free to enter. So
Plug.
join the Discord, come on over, and we are offering up 2.5 code cards for every entrant. So you have a chance to win a nice chunk of code cards to keep building up your Pokemon trading card game live collection. And we've also started offering up some physical cards to the winners of those. The last winner won a nice Squawkabilly EX to go into their Entei Iron Valiant deck, which will be great. So that's something that we're looking to do. So join the Discord. Again, it's free. Saturday nights, we're playing best of 3, so you can get some good quality practice in. And it does take a little bit of time, but we really enjoy it, and we have a great crew. There's a lot of great diversity of decks, and it's a perfect place to practice.
And as of starting this Saturday, I have implemented the timer for our Swiss rounds, and we have transitioned from best of 3 in the Swiss rounds to best of 1. We're
Mm,
still tinkering, but trying to limit the amount of time. So maybe
yes.
we'll go up in round count for the
Yeah.
Swiss, do best of 1s. Currently it's 3 rounds, best of 1. We might go up in the round count, cut the timer down a little bit, but trying to make it so that you're not sitting around for 4 or 5 hours for a
Yeah.
Saturday night Pokemon, and instead we're able to just kind of fly through maybe 2 hours.
Yeah. But the
Or
best of
I
3 is
like
still top 8? Or top
yeah,
cut? Not top
top
8.
four, top four cut currently.
Best of
Uh,
3.
yeah, best of 3, no
Awesome.
timer.
Cool. Well, that'll be again where you can get your good regional practice in and get those best of threes in. Well, awesome. And Rainbowsmaug is the one who heads that up. So if you have any questions, find him over on the pod Discord. It is in the description down below. You can also reach out to me and we'll guide you in that direction.
You can also you can also reach out to Eric, who will tell you to talk to me.
Basically. Um, so we were talking about cards yesterday, and some things that we could see that would be a fun way to a couple fun things to implement um, in just like making our own cards essentially, and hopefully Pokemon gets into that. And I think that this builds into a place where we would love to see what the feedback has to say. in regards to that, because some of the concepts we may have might be superly oppressive and might break decks in a specific way, or we might be onto something and hopefully Pokemon takes notice and gets after it. I mean, like so I'll start where we're just kind of coming up with cards, and I pull a lot of this knowledge from my time in playing Magic the Gathering. The first card I had was a card that would function similar to Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize is a card that you pay 2 life. When you in Magic the Gathering, you start out with 20 life. You're using your life as a resource, and you get to look at your opponent's hand and discard any card from in there outside of a land. Um, so essentially, what I considered is a similar supporter in that way that you look at your opponent's hand and put 2 cards into the Lost Zone. And I know that's big, and it maybe just needs to be one, but it's 1 to 2 cards, whatever makes sense. I started with 2. Pick 2 cards, put them into the Lost Zone so they never get them back, but you give your opponent a prize card. They get to take a prize card, so essentially they lose 2 cards, but they gain a prize, so they're only down 1 card, and you yourself are down your supporter for the turn. So I would the only thing is there's a lot of discard effects. Arbok EX exists, and there's other things like that that can really cripple people's hands at that point. But this is where I started with a card, and it seems again great hand disruption. You get to look at their hand and understand what they might play, and then you get to discard 2 of them, but then they get to put a card that you don't know into them. Maybe it's worth 2 prizes, maybe it's worth 1. I don't know, but that's where I started as a
I
card.
think I think so. Here, two thoughts. First one harkens back to the other thought. I think people will find that not fun to play against,
Yeah.
which I don't care. I mean, I love the idea of a card like this, but
Thoughtseize is a great card, and it is
it
very
is.
impressive. Any type of hand disruption card
But
like that.
that's Magic and not Pokemon. That
Yeah.
that is significantly more going down the line stuff. This is the TCG and not having anything to do with the fact that Pokemon is a battle back and forth, what have you.
And
Because that falls in line with the Snorlax not fun. People hate having their hand disrupted in the first place, and if you're disrupting it with never the chance of it returning to them, that's really rough.
there is oh man, there is a Pokemon I think right now that, and I couldn't tell you what it is. That I think doesn't allow your hand to be disrupted by by trainer cards from your
Supporters,
opponents and supporters. So there is a card that counteracts
potential card,
this uh,
hypothetical card.
fictitious card that's already
Yeah,
like out there, and it's a simple effect that if this is becomes rampant, you just there's another tech for it. So I agree that it is definitely something that is probably too much and maybe too unfair
so I
and
think
could be broken.
you go if you're gonna stick with 2 cards
Yeah,
that you can remove to the Lost Zone, it has to be a May ability. So
yeah.
the person playing the card doesn't have to do any of the above. They
They
can
could
just
just
take the information and
yeah,
choose not to remove anything. Um, if it's 2 cards to the Lost Zone, make it 1 prize per card that they
yeah,
choose.
up to 2 cards, and now
Up to
you get
2 cards, 1 prize per card. Your opponent doesn't get to draw though.
what do you mean?
Like I get to look at your hand.
Yeah,
I get to put up to 2 cards into the Lost Zone.
uh-huh,
You get 2 prizes.
uh-huh,
End.
yeah.
I think if you were to do it with 1 prize, you have to let your opponent draw to replace those cards.
Oh, so they draw a prize card and then they draw a card off the top.
And draw a card off the
So
top.
it becomes your opponent is essentially or not gaining. They're staying equal. They're not losing anything. They're gaining a prize, and they're getting a card off the top of the deck, and they're putting 2 cards into their hand that you don't know.
Hmm.
I like that as a, but you are also hopefully getting those disruptive pieces and removing 2 threats that you maybe aren't able to answer on board, or they could threaten your board. And but you're giving them multiple cards. Yeah, I could see that.
I think part of the struggle where a card like that Uh,
There isn't something that does that where you just give your opponent a prize card currently.
no, I think the the
Outside
the
of Roaring Moon
concept
killing itself, but that's our yeah, yeah, it just doesn't
not
work.
not good.
Yeah.
I think that while the concept of trading prizes for some sort of benefit is something that the TCG in general should look at.
Mm.
I think a card like what we're discussing, like a Thoughtseize-esque card, the struggle with that is currently there is not a way that you can put something from play into your opponent's hand and then play that into it, which is a massive factor in the balancing act or the usefulness of something like Thoughtseize in Magic, and the fact that you can play more than one Thoughtseize in a turn.
Yeah.
Because of the amount of, I don't say hand disruption, hand like
Manipulation?
reshuffling,
Sure.
yeah, manipulation. Um, let's say you play Pokemon Thoughtseize into me on your turn, and then it's my turn. I'm gonna Iono. Now all the information you had is gone.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant. And maybe you hit nothing. Maybe I had like energy, irrelevant Pokemon,
Hmm.
like whatever.
That happens with
Now,
Thoughtseize. You pay 2 life and you have no target. That
like,
is a very relevant thing in Magic, so it can definitely
agreed, but
happen here.
I think in Magic, typically you're going to follow that up with a more relevant play by using that information. And you now have that information, and the probability that your opponent's going to just reshuffle that hand back into their deck and draw 7 new cards is significantly lower than it is in Pokemon.
Hmm. True, true, true.
The exchange of cards in Pokemon is so much higher that that information is way less relevant than it is in Magic, where on average you're probably looking at a 1.2 card exchange per turn in Magic.
Yeah.
Pokemon, it's probably something like 2.5 in how often cards are being rolled back around. You're seeing different things. You're getting whole new hands. The draw mechanics are so much stronger. The tutor mechanics are so much stronger. That the information about what's in your opponent's hand has significantly less relevance than it does in something like Magic, because the hand is so much more dynamic in Pokemon than it is in Magic, where it's fairly static
Yeah.
or slowly changing. So you need a way for that to be relevant, because
Yeah.
if it's a supporter, you can only play it once, right?
And
Like you can play one, then next turn you can play it again. In Magic, you can go Thoughtseize, Thoughtseize.
yeah.
Like, check, cool, I saw something, got rid of one, I can
Now I want
Thoughtseize
the
you
other.
again.
Yeah. The other part of like this doesn't necessarily fit into, as I mentioned with the Snorlax of the back and forth. Like, how does that function as a card in if it were to be normal Pokemon? I literally kamikaze a Pokemon for you, like, so I can take away 2 of your attacks or something like that. That's essentially what that is, which is like
Yeah,
no, it doesn't fit into the lore, so I can understand why this card wouldn't maybe not exist. And that's I guess is like just a small like counter to my own point. I just think it'd be a cool card.
I
I've
agree.
never been a fan of that type of style of deck, but the moment I started
My favorite.
uh, playing uh playing hand disruption stuff and being able to gain information, like I really like hand information a ton in card games. It's why in like a current build of Garchomp, I didn't really like Gutsy Pickaxe. I was liking Trekking Shoes more because Gutsy Pickaxe is I reveal the card. So now you know what's in my hand. Even if I'm taking this like it's a supporter and I put it into my hand, but I might not play it this turn, you know that that's in my hand. Where Trekking
Yeah,
Shoes was look at the top card, choose if you want to put it into your hand or discard it, and then draw another card if you discard it. Love that because that's again I'm able to conceal the information, and I think it's something that I think more players should do as well is taking a second when you're playing to when you draw a card, don't immediately slam it because they knew that that came off the top of your deck. The more information you can conceal and don't give away as much, the better the better the more your opponent has to guess what is in your hand and what cards you've now drawn and what you're currently holding. Very similar to maybe holding an energy and when they think it's a supporter, and then they look to Iono you, and now you're drawing into more of your deck. Where if you were to play that energy, it's a like now like there's many facets, and I won't go into the details, but that's just a main thought of this is keeping more information back is better.
Okay, here's another one. Just thought of it. Where's my fling card? Where's my I throw my Pokemon at yours and the HP of my Pokemon is my damage. Like
I
my
would
Pokemon
imagine
gets knocked out.
there's a an electrode or a golem or something like that that has self-destruct as a mechanic. I wouldn't know because that's
No,
probably before our time.
I want like a
I know.
supporter.
Oh.
Like a fling card, like a
Mhm.
supporter that I can go, I throw Roaring Moon at your Iron Hands.
Yeah.
I
Trade
throw Iron
Charizard
Hands. Yeah.
Charizard for something, but that
Like
means you're giving up two prizes or
yeah, yeah, it's your Pokemon is knocked out. You're doing the damage. You're doing damage equal to your Pokemon's HP to the
two.
opponent's Pokemon. So like you could I feel like there's lots of ways, right? So you bravery charm onto Snorlax and fling Snorlax, and now you're able to like I'm using a
Reach
weird
bigger
example here, but
numbers. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It it's it's there. Could be fun.
I think I think that's where's a card like that in our format. I think
Yeah.
that like in the TCG, a card like that would be really interesting to see what people would build around it. Because now
Yeah.
you're just taking Pokemon and buffing them up, and you're trying to speed through. Then you get like red deck wins basically, right? That's
Yeah.
effectively what you're going to end up getting there.
You take
Is like
the
a
most HP basic you can find, throw something on it, and take out whatever big active they have, and
yep.
that plays. Yeah. And you're
And
just
then you
taking prizes.
probably try to get them to attack as well in there somehow. So like you
Yeah.
try to get them to attack and not die and get some damage out so that you can fling them.
Makes it could be fun.
I just
Definitely
think
could be fun.
that's a card that I think we would be cool to see in the TCG as a whole. That would be useful.
Yeah. Well, so the last card we kind of talked about, and I think it's too much if it's three cards. But if it's two cards, I think it's playable. Essentially, a supporter that you search your deck for up to two cards and put them into your hand. And if you and then essentially the card I don't know how the proper text would be, but then if you took two cards, you have to now discard two cards from your hand. And or if you take one card, you discard one card. So you can choose however many cards you want to pull out of up to two, and then no matter how many you take, that's how many cards you have to discard. So it kind of functions like a Professor Burnett, which is essentially taking colorless Pokemon and putting them into the discard. Um, and straight from the deck into the discard. This is a way to put stuff into your hand, and then you decide what's in your hand. You could say in a Lugia deck, you have two Archeops in hand, but you need to go grab two other cards from the deck. You grab those two cards that you need, and then pitch the Archeops. Do I think that makes decks too strong or oppressive? I think that that's a fair trade because you're able to if you're some decks will properly make use of the discard pile. Some decks will probably make use of discarding Battle VIP Pass and other cards that they currently don't need, whether it's a stadium or something like that.
It gets
So,
rid of Battle VIP Pass out of your hand and makes it not a useless dead card.
yeah, well, that card's going to be going away hopefully at the end of March, and that's
Yeah,
great for everybody. So, in general, what I think happens with a card like that, it's two for two, and also just offers up this kind of decent interaction where if your hand is short and small, that supporter isn't very good. Where if your hand is large, that card, like in a Gardevoir, that card becomes insane because you have so many cards you're looking to get rid of. Getting rid of two energy in a Gardevoir hand is awesome.
yeah.
That you can go grab two energy and immediately discard the two energy to reach specific numbers. So it to me feels like it could function really well and would be a great supporter. Is it does it turn into a card that's played in every deck? But we have
I think it
Ionos in
does.
every deck. We have Boss's Orders in almost every deck. We have all these cards that are commonly played, and I think that's the cool part about the core of Pokemon decks is you getting cards and collecting cards. Nest Balls, Ultra Balls, Boss's Orders, Ionos, right there, you're good. You're good to make
Mm-hmm.
most decks. Off of those cards alone, you can make a deck. You just have to find what you want to play. And in Magic, that isn't the case because
No.
your archetype and I don't know about Yu-Gi-Oh or One
Arcana.
Piece or Larcana or any of these other card games, but the ones that I do know, it's like if you build a Demir control deck and then you want to play a red deck wins deck, it's like you have to get a whole new subset of 75 plus cards
Mm-hmm.
to play that other deck. Where in Pokemon, you need like 30, 35, maybe not even because of energy, so
Yeah.
more like maybe probably like 30 to
There's
25
there's a pretty core like 30 cards that you're just set on.
playing, and you're just playing.
Yeah.
So very cool, and I love the concept. So we'll probably do another one of these segments
Two
against. Go
Hold on,
ahead.
two points.
Yes.
One, Spoot said, "Be nutty if luxurious cape with luxurious cape if the bump holds." I
Yeah.
think you have to have the luxurious cape because luxurious cape is an extra prize. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and then one other card concept that I like ADHD came back to me
Sure.
repeatedly throughout the conversation. There's no equivalent that I know of, but maybe I just haven't seen it being played. Where's the Tormoid Crypt equivalent? Or maybe not that strong, but something in that vein where I'm allowed to disrupt your discard pile because I
Yeah.
don't see a lot of that. Even if it was a select 3 cards,
And
like let's say
shuffle
it's
them back
a
into their deck. Like it's like opposite of Super Rod.
I think Lost Zone. I think you go like it's a 3 of from discard to Lost Zone.
Yeah. If you're gonna go into the Lost Zone, I feel like it's better is like only two,
Only 2.
maybe, maybe.
Depend if it's a supporter, 3. If it's not a supporter, 1 or 2.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's like that could be good. And essentially, like putting them back in the deck, like so it's like the same thing as a Super Rod, can help in certain matchups. It's like
Yeah.
it's not the Super Rod. It's the I don't know what it would be called. Uh,
Yeah.
um, mediocre rod, where you're shuffling
That's it. It's the mediocre rod.
where you're putting your opponent's cards back into their deck, which against certain archetypes, that's really good. Like if I'm playing against Chen Pao, I go mediocre rod, the 3 energy into your deck, but you're gonna search him out with Shivery Chill probably anyways. But that still
Yeah.
can interact your turns if I have other plays to help disrupt what you're doing. And similar to it's like it's tough because if it goes back into the deck, then I think it's probably just not very good. Where into a
I
lost
think it
zone is
has to go
better.
to Lost Zone.
Yeah, and that's where it's like if it's a supporter, probably maybe still.
I
I
think
don't
2
know.
to 3 as a supporter. I'm not a TCG card balancer. I'm just
That's
I'm
not
just a
our
dreamer. We're just
expertise. Yeah.
dreamers here,
Yes.
okay? Let
Yeah.
whatever the name of the company is there that designs the actual cards for the Pokemon TCG to
Figure
figure
that
out the
out. And
details.
I would assume that the that company has done a lot of this stuff. They've maybe even thought of the exact cards we've talked about here, and there's a reason they're not in the format because they probably would
Probably.
break stuff. So,
I
but
think
also,
even
yeah,
I was gonna say I think even a 1-for-1
yeah,
on a supporter, like on a I can only play this card this turn,
yeah.
but putting 1 card from their discard to the Lost Zone feels like it could be a worthwhile card.
Yeah, you almost need to be
Uh,
like take the top card of their deck and a card from the Lost Zone, because then that's
but
like
yeah,
it's a random card plus a card in the Lost Zone, and then it's like, does that create too much variance of like, man, he got lucky, he hit my only Iron Hands, and that was my one out,
yeah.
like off the top. It's like that could be pretty feels bad, but it is what it is.
I think you go
Um,
two from discard to Lost Zone.
yeah.
Supporter done. It's fair.
Well,
You can send my royalties to PayPal. Zach Benson.
Doug Benson. Speaking of like dreaming and potentially fever dreams, Lost Box Kitchen Sink, the Lost Box that Tord Reklev brought to Gdansk Regionals is a deck that
It's
immediately
amazing.
piqued your interest.
It's amazing.
I have it pulled up here. We're looking at the Pokemon. It is running it's running uh 4 Comfies, Sableye, Iron Hands EX, Kyogre from Celebrations, Palkia Origin Form Palkia V, and Palkia V-Star to make use of the Star Portal ability and Subspace Wall as a great attack option. Radiant Greninja in most Lost Zone variants. Some not lately. Some have been going the dehydrated Tina builds. Roaring Moon, new card from Paradox Rift, insane, and a Singleton Cramorant, which is a
I mean,
great efficient
you just gotta
attacker.
run Cramorant if you're
Yeah,
playing Lost
if you
anything.
get if you can consistently get 4 cards in the Lost Zone and this card isn't your deck, I don't know what you're doing. So essentially, this is your Pokemon package. No mana fee. Only one Sableye, so in a Lost Zone, it's a little tough.
I'm just gonna put this out there after
Yeah,
having played it a bunch, because of the Pokemon package, and on top of that, on top of the trainer package, it's just offense.
yeah,
This deck does not play defense,
yeah.
where most of the other Lost Zone flavors play a
They're
lot of defense.
they're trying to play around and trap you, and then
Hmm.
Iono and Roxanulate and everything. So yeah, I see that. And
They're much more tempo-y, much more like control the pace of the game until they can get their big win con out. This deck is just like, hey, I have a bunch of card draw. Which one of these win conditions do you want to play? Or
yeah,
do you want to just play all of them this game?
totally, totally. So moving on to the trainers, you've adjusted the list slightly, so this is
I was
not
going
the
to say
exact Tord list, but
asterisks on the list.
you dropped one escape rope for a boss's orders to have kind of being able to pull something up and Iron Hands it or Roaring Moon it or just have a good selection of that. Usually escape rope is used, I think, in the Tord list, but I think
It's
that's
usually
worth trying
plus
out.
one escape rope and plus one pal pad. And I dropped those two for one counter catcher, one boss's order.
There it is, looking pretty. So we got 4 switch cart, 3 escape rope, 2 energy recycler, 1 heavy ball, battle VIP pass, the Pokestop, which is great. You're looking at a ton of items. I mean, how sick would it be to spin a stop, grab a counter catcher, and then Iron Hand something that is like Iron Hands like a Bipperol or something like that, or even into a taking or 3 prizes off of that. It's just incredibly strong. 3 of Super Rod, 3 of Poke Gear, or Mirage Gate, which is a must in any Lost Zone deck. This card is absolutely busted, accelerating energy. That you put the 1 boss, 4 Nest Ball. The 4 Colress was the big part of what Tord was playing as a way to just Colress and then Pal Pad and then Colress and always just be playing Colress to get you to the numbers you need in Lost Zone. And also seeing 5 cards deep into your deck and picking 3 is nutty. One of the best
Donk.
supporters in the format, and the one counter catcher. The 12 energy allows you to play, 4 darkness to make sure, this is a great card to attach and pitch, but also you need to have double dark to make use of both of Roaring Moon's attacks. So very big here. You only need 1 electric energy, so you can pitch one or Lost Zone one, knowing if you have the other. Um, Similar, the 4 water energies for both Greninja and Palkia. Very relevant to have the extras. So you can pitch one. One can be used in other places, and the 2 of psychic energy also makes sense since 1 psychic energy to power up a Sableye. So you just have to monitor your energy count really a lot in this deck. But I'm gonna let Zach take the stage and kind of give a couple extra concepts to the deck.
So one of the big things, just because you were touching on energy, that I feel like this list, I don't want to say solved, but like why it feels so much better than what I've played so far. I played a lot of the Kyogre list, and the one thing I always found with Kyogre was energy management was very difficult because of you're running. I think that list ran like 9, maybe 10 energy, and you're running 3 different energy types. I think it was for that list.
And
It
the
might have been
metal
4.
energy with Zamazenta and things like that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like you're just like constant, and you need double for Zems, and you need double for Kyogre, and you need like there's all these like weird ticks of like what things are going where and what have you. Same thing with the Turbo Lost Zone variant, where I felt like it just wasn't as strong. Um, the energy issue wasn't as much of like it wasn't as prevalent, but I felt like the Pokemon package was not nearly as strong. So instead, I'm like, cool, these are my options. Lost Tina still, a good choice all around. Um, but I just didn't jive with Lost Moon. It's kind of the same problem. Like I feel like there's too much going on, which makes no sense since this list has more going on. But I think the diversity of lethal options in this deck
Hmm.
with the higher energy count, I never feel like my option is limited by either what I have from lethal options in my Pokemon package, or by the fact that my energy package is too slim, or I have to, not that I have to pay too much attention to it, but like that I have to really fine choose exactly what energy it is. It's like, no, you can just play. Whereas before it was like, okay, I have to be like hyper focused on what my energy count is, which ones are where, did any get prized, what have you. And like you still need to be aware and counting and make sure, but it's significantly less like detrimental.
Hmm.
Where in other flavors that I've played, suddenly you'd be like, oh, well, I'm one energy short from winning this game, and I'm not going to be able to get it.
Yeah.
There's almost always an option here with this list because, oh, I'm one energy short to make Roaring Moon be able to attack this turn. But like, if I retreat Roaring Moon and then Super Rod my energy back into the deck, I can just Mirage Gate and get Iron Hands online, or I can
Hmm.
get Greninja online, or I can get like you can, because it's a Lost Box variant
Hmm.
where you just have a lot of tools, you have more options to use those tools to bring something else into effect, as opposed to before it was like, here's a bunch of tools, use them around like these 3 win conditions.
Yeah. So
Now it's like,
essentially,
here's a bunch of
watching
win conditions.
yeah, watching you play it, it just felt like your diversity of angles of attack are kind of insane. Like
Yes.
you can like and maybe that's a part of this deck being a very difficult deck to pilot in a lot of ways. And I have ran up against people on the ladder that just they made a mistake on turn 2 or turn 3 in lost zoning the wrong thing, and it's like, cool, you can't win the game now. Like, sorry.
Yeah.
Like, and that's just a part of, you have to go through the motions, you have to understand, and you have to make the right decisions, and you need to know the matchups, which I think is great for a deck like this. And I think it's very fun to see. I think it offers a great level of, great complexity in what you can be doing. You can be attacking early and pitching, chipping damage with Cram. You can finish it late with Kyogre. Palkia can load up your Kyogre very easily to Aqua Storm late. So Palkia V-Star Star Portals functions as a pseudo additional Mirage Gate, or
Hmm.
you can even load it up early into Greninja and get two prize cards that way, where you just
Or load it
throw
onto itself and swing for 2
uh,
whatever.
2+ like easily. So this becomes a very efficient attacker, and then I mean Iron Hands being able to swing into those single prizers. Um, is in setup checkmate plays is great, and I mean obviously Comfey does its thing, and Nikolai cleans things up with Roaring Moon being just a incredibly efficient attacker, 220 if you can bump a Pokestop or any other stadium that they have, but also just straight KO anything, which is nutty. So wild, really
I
fun,
would
really fun deck. See,
I would say all the other Lost Zone flavors I've played have felt a lot like most dual color control decks in the Magic format,
sure.
where you have 1 to 2 win conditions,
Hmm.
maybe 3 tops, that are big win conditions.
Yep.
And your whole goal is just controlling the game
Until you can do
so that
that.
you can get that win condition in a position where you can win with it.
Yeah.
So like blue black control is the one I'm the most familiar with off the top of my head from like 2010. So you were playing Grave Titans, for non-magic people, just a big beater with a bunch of make some more beaters. So you control the game until you can get this big guy on the field,
Yep.
swing and attack. Great. Um, it was very straightforward. You're now streaming your Discord again, and
Oh
not
no, I got it. I got it.
okay.
I
It
got it
just
back.
it just showed up for me, so I'm
I
like, shit.
literally
Got
clicked something and I was like, "Yep, you're an idiot. We're streaming, bud."
it. So there's that, and then this feels a lot. I don't know what I would equate this to in other TCG formats, but
This
like
is like a tempo deck where it's
if
like
yeah,
if
tempo-y,
you need to go aggro, you go aggro. If you need to slow down and stall the game out and just chip away with like crams and Sableye and your Sableye, you can. It's like
yeah.
a part of me is like we've talked about it is like do you ditch the Kyogre package and maybe the Palkia package, but then it's like then you're just a Roaring Moon Iron Hands deck, and then you lose the Greninja potential play, which is I think incredibly powerful and like and very very good. For but then that gives you like an additional Sableye and maybe an extra Cram. It's like, but does that really take games? Like, no, that just like can set you up
Sometimes
to
it
do
does.
well. Sometimes it does, and but sometimes it doesn't. And I think the diversity of the option again allows you to be a true tempo deck where
Yeah.
whatever you need to be playing, you play.
I
And
feel
yeah,
I was just saying I feel like it is the most true list to what I internalized as what the meaning of Lost Box is, which is
yeah,
Lost Toolbox.
yeah,
And now I feel like I actually just have a box of tools, and it is entirely up to me
yeah,
as the pilot, the arbiter of my destiny with the deck to use those tools effectively. The deck's not trying to do anything in particular.
yeah,
It's not a Roaring Moon, it's not a Charizard where like this is your game plan. You might have to adjust slightly to deal with what your opponent's doing, but generally it's get from point A to point B, and it's a fairly straight line. This deck is just like, hey, here's a spider web graph. Choose your own adventure,
figure it out. Yep,
and you have all the tools. We're not going to tell you how to use any of them. Some
yeah,
tools you might have to throw away to be able to get better tools for this job in particular. And
yeah,
I love that. It
yeah.
feels so good to play because of that.
It's fun to watch. It seems really good. The more I've seen Lost Zone decks be played, it's something I could definitely consider trying to work in. But at the same time, I'm definitely still working with my own, Garchomps and Blastoises and Chimbaos of the world and everything like that. So I'm feeling great. Definitely like the choose your own path
It's
goosebumps.
goosebumps.
It's yeah, Lost Box goosebumps. Um,
Lost
I
bumps.
Lost bumps. So either way, I think what basically this says to me, and what I made a comment on the Discord about this is currently I am playing against so many different decks on the ladder. I am seeing so many different videos being put out. When you look at the Gdansk regionals, there was a Palkia with Ice Rider Calyrex in the top 8. You had Snorlax stall. You had many different iterations of Charizard. You see Gardevoir even teching, some are playing Luxurious Cape, some aren't. Some are playing Zacian V, some aren't. Some are playing Battle VIP Pass, some aren't. And nothing feels set in stone of this is the 60 for this deck and there is no question as to you play something different. No, it is
Yep.
legitimately it's more this is the 50 cards you play of this deck and then there's these other 10 plus slots
Yeah.
that you put in whatever you need. You go against the meta. You put in these tech things, and that's what this deck feels like. Where they took the Roaring Moon Lost Zone, Lost Box deck and said, "Okay, Roaring Moon is a great option here. Let's let's build
So,
around it," and they did.
so is Kyogre. So is this.
Yeah,
So is that. So is that.
and
Yeah.
they blended the colors really well.
Spoon nailed this. This is such a fluid game, and I think that has been the biggest takeaway I've had as a Magic player for a very long time. That was apprehensive about getting into Pokemon. Didn't find it super interesting. It didn't pique my interest for a really long time. Um, as I've kind of started to deep dive and let the ADHD hyperfixation take over into this, the fluidity of this game and
Exactly,
the
Spoon.
diversity of deck lists which are running the same core package and not like a one or two off deck list change, but like like you said, like 10 cards.
Yeah.
That's so foreign to the TCG experience I've had between Magic and Hearthstone when I've played a lot of both over the years,
Yeah.
that it's refreshing. Like I
Hmm.
feel like you're actually able to sit down with a deck list
And a
with
single card can redefine a deck that gets printed.
yeah.
And I think that's also really cool is that like we can see these cards come in and out and new cards be printed and with rotations happening like that really changes the game. And I've seen obviously like in every game there is a rotation and there are new sets that come into play. Those are great. Those are great. But it just feels like what we're seeing is like whole new archetypes are spawned out of this, or it takes a deck from being tier 2 into tier 1, or there's a card that's printed that takes a deck from being the best deck in format to now it's tier 2 and should be less played. But if it isn't isn't respected, it can easily be back into tier 1 like we've seen with Mew. Like we'll probably
Hmm.
see with Snorlax is that there will probably be a huge tech against Snorlax going forward. And then in not long, Snorlax will be so hated against that people will then drop their Snorlax hate, and then Snorlax will rise again. It'll wake up,
No, let's rise again.
and it's gonna wake up. So I find that fascinating, and it's this rock paper scissors style of game,
Yeah.
and it's not just rock paper scissors, but it's like I mean you have shears, you have granite, you have you know like all these different kinds of papers. I don't know. I was just trying to come up with really like
All these different kinds of papers.
see you run into all these things that function so wonderfully in that there's not just, one type of scissors. There's many types of
No,
scissors. And there's
I
many types of rocks and there's many types of papers and that makes it really cool. And yeah, it's very cool.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I like the diversity is amazing.
Yeah,
Coming from other TCGs, it's refreshing. It's refreshing to be able to sit down with a deck list, look
I
at the
agree.
meta that you're playing in, and go, I have a bunch of options, and I get to choose how I want to put them in, and they're viable. Not
Yeah,
just I can change a bunch of stuff to this deck list that I net decked from the internet that was a top 8 at XYZ event in the last amount of time,
yeah,
and like swap 2 or 3 cards out so it fits my local meta and go play it at F&M or whatever. Like great. Like you can do that with Magic all day. You can just go pick a deck off the top 8 and go play it at your F&M, change 2 cards out for your local meta and
crush.
never change that deck list
Yep,
and crush and play it all the way until the cards rotate out and you have to build something else.
yep,
And the change up of cards in those deck lists across the meta that you'll play against at your local game store is very minute. That change. If 2 people are playing Splinter Twin, they're probably running the identical deck list. Maybe
yeah,
2 cards different.
not
Pokemon,
far off.
I can play one deck. Eric can play the same deck, and 3 other people at my local game store at Pokemon League can be playing the same deck. We could all be playing Gardevoir and have 5 to 10 cards different per deck and still be successful. They're still
Yeah,
viable options, and it's so refreshing as a game.
truly is. And again, I think that cards that coming in, they don't always inherently break decks, but they also take care of Nabes. They don't break decks. They come in, they support decks. They've printed good text against decks so they don't become too oppressive. They've done a really good job. So you can tell Pokemon is thinking and listening and testing the game, and they're a part of it. And they're just not shipping cards out and saying good luck, and people are just
Good
getting
luck.
completely wrecked and not enjoying the meta. So that's why it's like that. The Snorlax conversation was good to have. It's good to see just a lot of these decks kind of just do their thing and be very fun to play. And I think that's the other part about what we're seeing in Pokemon is that we legitimately like, as Spoot said, it's like, what Pokemon do you like?
Hmm.
Play it. Like you probably can find a deck that plays that, and that's really, really cool. So, obviously there's going to be some that aren't in the format right now and different things like that, but it's still, you can find something you like. I mean, I didn't even know that Chen Pao was a Pokemon, and that's what got me kind of hooked into this, and it's a fantastic archetype and awesome deck, and it's super explosive, and it is spawned me into building, Blastoise and Garchomp, and then also taking a look at Miraidon and so many other decks. So that's a very fun concept, and learning more about the Pokemon in general. So, yeah, well, that's going to be it for us today. Saturday Night Pokemon Discord, join it. We'll be there. We'll be pumping. Yeah, might try and get Zach to play in a league on Saturday as well, so we might have a full day of Pokemon. But if not, League Cup next week at the same shop. Should be a ton of fun. Yeah, I think we're at a place where share this around, let people know we're talking about Pokemon, and let people know about the pod Discord so we can kind of, you know, hype people up and join an amazing community. That's all I got.
It's great. See you
Awesome.
guys on Saturday.